Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Saba Show, and today we are doing round 2 of the AFL season predictions. Last week, it came out much earlier than it is coming out this week. I have a few time constraints. That is why this one's going to be just a little bit shorter, and it's come out later. Without further ado, let's just jump right into it. First up is tomorrow night's game between the Bulldogs and the Baggers, and obviously last week the Blues surprised many. Didn't look great until the last quarter, where they just put the foot on the gas and absolutely blew Richmond out of the water. The Bulldogs lost by 26 to the Demons, and they would obviously be very disappointed with that. But obviously something else has played out in the last week or so. Luke Beveridge obviously gotten a little bit of drama with Tom Morris, and obviously that is, well, it's very easy to get, sidetracked with, all the noise off the field. But Luke Beveridge has said today that he's energized and ready to go, putting that event behind him. Blues will not have Adam Chera, nor will they have Jack Martin or their coach. A number of coaches. But Sam Walsh has fast-tracked his return, and is amazingly returning for round 2. Some people were saying he was going to be out for a month. He's come back in the second week of the season. But that is a very good sign for Carlton. I think this is very close. I don't know how to split this. I'm actually just going to be biased and say Carlton are winning by about a goal. I think it's going to be really tight. I think it's going to be roughly that margin either way. But I think the Blues are going to win it. Last week, they proved people wrong. Obviously, took that step by not getting blown out in the last quarter. In fact, they did quite the opposite and reversed roles. The Bulldogs looked all right round 1. Obviously, the Ds were, just a little bit too more... that doesn't make any sense, but a little bit more classy. Aaron Norton was pretty much their sole option up forward, and they have had a few players under injury clouds. They should be right to go, but I think Carlton are going to win. I'm not going to be surprised if the Bulldogs do, though. Second game is Sydney-Geelong, and much like the fixture prior, I think this is a really tough one to predict. Geelong absolutely destroyed the Bombers, and I think a lot of pundits and fans are just saying Geelong are gonna drop off, but Father Time just seems to be on their side. And the Swans, well, they also withheld a pretty good run by the Giants. Obviously the Giants scored pretty well last week, but the Swans just did one better. Luke Parker kicked 5. That was absolutely nuts. And on the other side of it, Patrick Dangerfield looked like he was, back to his best, much like Patrick Cripps. Both those players have been in the war zone in the last year or so due to injuries. But look, this one is also another one that it's a toss of a coin. I'm going to say Geelong win purely because of that domination last week. I think a lot of people were surprised by that. The Swans at times looked a little bit vulnerable. Buddy's 4 goals away from the 1,000. I don't know when it's going to happen. Probably in 3 weeks' time. He'll kick a goal each week. Not exactly some very easy opponents in the first month of the year. But as much as you'd like to back Sydney at home, where they are very formidable, I think Geelong, their start to the year, Tyson Stengel was very good as well. I think all signs point towards a Cats victory. Another game that is very intriguing, Collingwood Adelaide on Saturday afternoon. The Pies, we sort of saw this coming, didn't we? Collingwood usually start off the season pretty well. They pick up a very big win. And they did that last week against the Saints. There were times where, they were up by a fair portion and then looked to have choked the game before they, they ensured that this game was going to be theirs. And they basically got the job done. Nick Dacos looked very good. And on the other side of things, the Crows' rookie, if that makes any sense, Josh Rochelle, was absolutely sublime. 5 goals by him. And I'll tell you what, very promising for the Crows. He's been an absolute wonder for them in the first 3 games he's played. Mind you, a couple of those have been preseason games, but, signs are pointing towards a very dangerous small forward that you're going to have to deal with. And he's only in, he's playing his second game of AFL footy this weekend. I'm going to back the Pies at home. The Crows somehow found a way to choke last week. And I don't know. I think Craig McRae's got the Pies on the same page. A lot of people would have anticipated them to be in the bottom four. Last week's performance was not indicative of a bottom four side. And I think they are going to go do exactly what they did last week and win by not a huge margin. But as I said earlier, I mean, Collingwood and the Crows probably both going to be bottom four sides. But I think the Pies, well, they obviously won last week. The Crows didn't. So, look, I think the Pies will be riding the momentum. And I think the Crows are just going to be down in the dumps a little bit. Obviously, as AFL footballers, you've got to go again. But I think Collingwood are going to have a very good start to the season, going 2-0. Or should I say, 2 from 2. Next fixture, we got the Bombers and the Lions. I mean, we talked about this game before with the Cats, but the Bombers got absolutely blown out. Nick Martin was probably the only silver lining you could get out of that performance, having 5 goals on debut, which has got to go in the books as one of the greatest debut performances ever. Brisbane Lions will be missing Mitch Robinson this week. Actually, no, they won't. Change that thought. His bump that he put on Xavier Dersma, that has been overturned. And rightfully so, because he's putting his head over the ball. Dersma's putting his head over the ball. It's a bit of a, coincidental knock, I guess you could say. This one's at Marvel. Essendon, as I said, they've got the engine room, but they've got no one to kick it to up forward. Obviously, the injury to Harry Jones hurts. Jake Stringer's back. Kyle Langford is out. So Jake Stringer's probably, last year he played up forward. In the midfield. So I think his services forward are going to be needed. Simply because they just don't have the stocks there. They don't have the threat. And I think the package could deliver. But to be honest, if you're an Essendon supporter, you're probably not going into this with high hopes, and I adopt the same attitude. So I think Brisbane are going to win. They did what they had to do last week against Port, who were probably better for much of the night, and then the Lions just, third quarter, they realised they were in a bit of a hole, dug themselves out of it, and held on for the win. So that's what good footy sides do, and I think they'll take care of business here. Port Adelaide taking on Hawthorn, and Hawthorn won last week against North. It was not pretty. They got the job done. Port Adelaide did not win, but, despite, the results from last week, I think Port are going to get up in this one. Adelaide Oval, the crowd is going to be pretty fierce. Hawthorn have surprised a few teams. Obviously, it's very easy to, let the Hawks go under the radar. Given how well they finished the year and how, they've picked up a win. As I said, wasn't convincing, but they've started the year well. Jack Gunston's back, and he looked like a man on a mission. However, he couldn't convert. So, I think they also have McAvoy and Bruce coming into the side, which does make this game a little bit more interesting. Port will not have Dersma. They did have a few injury worries. I'm not sure about Charlie Dixon's status. But look, even despite Hawthorn's ends, I think they were well off from playing very, very good brand of football. They just basically were the beneficiary of a North side who also couldn't kick the ball. So they did a better job of that last week. I think Port Adelaide are too good a football side to lose this one. Then again, I could be surprised, but I'm going to pick the Power to win at home. And then the Suns and the D's, two sides that have also won both of their first round matchups. The Suns beat the Eagles. It was pretty neck and neck for 3 quarters. And then West Coast just ran out of gas. Really comes down to a lack of personnel, lack of experience. The Suns, if they didn't win the game in that scenario or situation, mate, I don't know what to say. I wouldn't know what to say. D's flexed their muscles against the Dogs last week. Petrarca and Oliver Bulls. Bailey Fritsch as well, doing business. It's been a long time since the D's have played football. The Suns have played most recently. So, going to be interesting to see who's more alert. D's are a very well-drilled side. I don't think the the fact that the Suns are playing at home really plays into it at all. The Suns obviously have a few holes to fill, but it was very nice to see Matt Rowell get back to that form. I did say last week, is he going to return to that form? And the first round performance by him was indicative that Took Miller may not have it as difficult this season in the midfield. It won't be him being a lone hand. Matt Rowell is there to save the day and relieve some duties. But look, I think the Ds are going to be too good. You just look at the list side by side. Obviously, Salem's out, but you'd imagine the Ds go into this one relatively unchanged. And yeah, I think they're just going to be too classy. The Suns are going to, make a few errors here and there, and they're going to get punished. So I think the Ds are just going to be too good. North Eagles, both sides lost on the weekend. North Melbourne, God, they were awful. It actually looked promising for them about halfway through the second quarter, and then it just fell off an absolute cliff. The three big man situation was just a disaster. I remember saying last week, who are they going to pick out of the three? Ruckman, Coleman, Jones, Sherry, and Goldstein. Well, they ended up picking all three, so they never had to have that dilemma. But it actually cost them in the long run. It just didn't work. They're not very mobile. A lot of them, they're pretty slow. They're pretty slow. I mean, in comparison to the other agile ruckmen in the league that can get around the ground, those three can't do it to the same extent. So it was not great for them. The Eagles actually put up a good fight given their personnel. They do have some personnel coming back as well. Tim Kelly, Darling, Shuey, I believe, Duggan maybe, Ryan's back. So those are a lot of quality ins, and I think that's ultimately going to be the thing that gives the Eagles the edge over North in this one. It is a Marvel Stadium, and the Eagles don't necessarily play the greatest here. I mean, historically, they're pretty awful. But I think the Eagles are just too good to pass up this opportunity. So it's Eagles for the win. Richmond GWS, another two sides that lost in week one. And Richmond's midfield was exposed last week. Got absolutely torn apart in the last quarter against the Blues. Also have some players who just couldn't avoid the injury bug this early into the season. And it is already Dion Prestia and Rewalt going out of the side, so they will need to look into their reserve stocks. The Giants, I think, put up a really good fight against the Swans. Obviously, class prevailed, but, to be honest, I'll give them credit. The Giants, put on a show, and that game was very entertaining, generally speaking. I don't really have much to say about the Giants. Lockie Whitfield was quiet last week. Would like to see him get more of the footy. And I think that will help, the hopes of GWS getting up in this one. But Richmond at the G, I mean, last week you would have predicted them to win at the G, and they didn't. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to predict them to lose again. I think GWS will win. Obviously, we saw Richmond exposed in the midfield last week, and that ultimately cost them the game. And I think it could easily happen again. GWS are loaded for midfield stocks, so I think they may exploit that. So GWS to beat Richmond. Richmond going 0-2. And final game of the round is Fremantle St Kilda. St Kilda, I mean, I don't really know what to say about them. They just continue to disappoint. Obviously, it's only one round into the year. It doesn't make or break your season as of yet. We're not at that point in the year, but can't be a good sign, can it? And we said in the predictions last week, I backed St Kilda to win, saying, well, surely it's got to click for them. I mean, last season they lost to mediocre sides, and that's what cost them ladder position. Would they change the fortunes this year? No. They lost to a side that probably is going to end up finishing below them this season, but that could easily change. Could easily change if they can't win games like that against Collingwood. Jack Hayes was a revelation. I don't know where they poached that guy from. Well, obviously we do know. But how he hasn't been in the league, I think he's 25. How he didn't get an opportunity before them is mind-boggling, whatever the hell you want to say. Fremantle somehow got over the line. Good teams do that. Heath Chapman is Fremantle's saviour. The key figures popped up in the right time. Lockie Schultz with a big goal late. Not going to lie, I did have a little bit of doubt about Fremantle, considering pretty much every single player. Their best one on every line was out. Darcy, Taverner, and Fife. But they were able to fill the void. Rory Lobb was good. Tracy didn't get a lot of the footy, but he brought it to ground every single time. That's what he brings, the ferociousness. And yeah, look, Fremantle at home, you got to back them in. St Kilda were disappointing last week. I don't expect them to beat a good side if they can't beat a bad one. So I'm going to back the Dockers at home. Home crowd will be behind them. Simple stuff, really. And that's going to be it. Make sure to drop a like on the show and subscribe. We're doing this every week. Sorry for the later upload this week, but thank you for your support recently. We'll see how we go. Hopefully the baggers get up. And that's all from me. So I'll see you in the next video.